Greetings, everyone. Steve, Paracords of Kindness. How are you doing today? Hopefully your weaving has been happy. Okay, with that said, what I have for you today is I'm going to show you how I stitch a caged Solomon bar. Now, I've seen quite a few videos on how to make a caged Solomon, but I've never seen one on how to do the stitching. And I've had a few people ask me about it. And I'll be honest with you, this bracelet, this would be the display side or the front side. And the back side looks good too. You can set up on your jig in reverse buckles, flip them around upside down and make it. You see what I'm saying? Here's another one I've made recently. Right. Now these are right here are for customers, and this is the one I made for myself. These some of my personal favorite colors. Right? Okay, now with that said, this one I'm doing. I apologize for the dark colors, but this one also is for a paying customer, and these are the colors that they want. So I apologize. But what we have here is let's see, Stealth Olive and Space Blue. Interesting thing about this Space Blue, it can look either green or blue depending on what you pair it with. And pairing it with this dark Stealth Olive green color, it brings the blue out. Right? Okay. Now, yeah, there's the front side. That was the back side, sorry. Okay, and we're going to stitch it with Midnight Blue. And like I said, I apologize because these are some dark colors. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Okay, let's see. Where we're going to start off at. First off, I've measured out approximately 6 feet of micro cord. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that's probably going to be more than I need. But, as I always say, I would rather have more and cut off the excess and throw into the scrap bucket than start and get down toward the end and realize, I didn't cut it long enough. That's so frustrating. We want to keep happy weaving, not frustrated weaving. So I always overestimate, right? Okay, now, and I'll say this too. Here's your little tip, trick, insight, or whatnot. When I go to actually do the stitching on something, I'll cut the excess off of the main body and I'll cut and burn the cords and leave about an inch and a half on there, right? I won't cut and burn them as the finished product yet. I'll wait till the very end and do them all at once. Why? Because sometimes when you get down to the end and you go to stitch, if you've already cut and burned these in the finished location, that lump of hard plastic will hinder you from getting your lacing needle or your fid through there to do the last bit of stitching. So I've learned to do it like this. And once I get all the stitching and everything done, then I come back and I cut and burn everything at one time. Make sense? Okay, now, with this said, as you can see on here, you can see this one, how it comes out, the accent piece, this is the blue, right? We're going to put a stitching across the top of it and across the bottom of it, all the way down both sides. Now, the way I do this is I use 2 pieces of basically 6-foot cord. And we're going to start on the back. We're going to anchor our stitching thread on the back. Now, if we look, for those who know how to do a Solomon or a caged Solomon, if you look right here, let me see. Let me get my handy-dandy laser pointer out. I mean, my fid out that I use as a pointer. This piece here, let's zoom in just a little bit. Hopefully this will, we'll be able to see this. Okay. Right here, this piece of space blue, we refer to it as blue. This piece of blue right here, it's running this direction, up and down the bracelet. So you have one piece that's going, and it's going through the bracelet, and it's coming out and wrapping around it. The other side is going downward, and it's going through the bracelet, and it's wrapping around on the other side of the bracelet. So basically what you have is this piece of blue right here, or actually the blue that's wrapped around the side, is one big long piece. Both working ends are down here, and the halfway point or the midpoint of that piece of blue cordage is right there. Makes sense? So when we do the stitching, that's how we're going to do it. We're going to anchor the halfway point of our microcord right up here. And we're going to take both legs of that microcord and wrap. One's going to go around the top of this, and the other one's going to go around the bottom. I'm going to go all the way down one side. Then we'll come back with a second piece of approximately 6 foot piece of microcord and anchor its halfway point and on the back and do the same thing, but for the other side. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to try to show you how to do this. And this can be kind of tricky. And the reason I say that is because once you anchor it, you're going to have one piece of microcord just dangling off that's going to get in your way as you're trying to stitch with the other end of it. Right? So you have to be mindful not to get all this stuff tangled up when you're doing it. But there is a bonus. That first time you come down through here, because I will normally stitch across the top of all these pieces first, and then the other part of that same cord, microcord, I'll do the bottom, right? And the bonus is that second go through where you're doing across the bottom, you're going through the same spot in the bracelet that you went through to do the first part. Make sense? So basically, you've already made a space for your stitching needle or your fid, lacing needle, whatever, to go through there. So the second run is a little bit easier because the hole's already been made for you. It's already been widened out. The little gap between the cords has already been widened out, and it's a little easier. Now that first go through, you got to get it just right to get it to go through there, but it will go through there. And once you do this a couple of times, you kind of get good at it. You know, it's like anything. You practice, practice, practice. But with all that said, let's see if I can show you how to do it. First off, let's see. We're going to do... Trying to see which... Here, let me look. See, and I always do that. I keep one to see. Let's see. That one's going to go that way. And that one's going to go... Yeah. Okay. Basically, what we're going to do... Okay. If we look right here, you've got the back side. You got this one piece. This is part of your secondary cordage on the main body of the Solomon. And then you have this other one right here. You're going to loop your microcord around that and make the halfway point be the loop around this. So you're going to have two strands, two working ends hanging off. And one is going to go for this side, and one is going to go for this side. But we're going to do this one right here first. I'm going to loop around this piece first. And, you know, you do this any way you like, but I'll show you how I do it. What I'm going to do is... I'm going to go underneath, from this direction, I'm going to go underneath this piece of dark green and come out here and then go through one more time. Does that make sense? So we're going to take our micro or lacing needle. And if you can see this, yeah, you should be able to see it. I'm going to go right here and I'm going to go up under. Do we see how I did that? And we're going to pull this microcord through so that the halfway of this microcord is right there. We'll pull it through. Okay, we got one in here and one in here. And we're going to take these two ends and just find the halfway point. You know, run your fingers out to the ends of each of these cords till you get to the halfway point. Line these two up. See, basically the halfway point. And then run our fingers back. And just kind of pull it. And now we're at the halfway point. You see that? Okay, now we're going to take the end that we're not using now and just move it out of the way. Now we're going to come back and we're going to go back through in the same spot that we just did, creating a loop. I'm getting kind of tangled down here. We're going to come back through in that same spot. You see that? Same spot. Now we're going to pull all of that through. Okay, now we got to get this piece out of the way. We don't want to get it caught up in there. So we pull all this through. And now we have it looped around that piece. We see that right here. Okay, now we'll just pull it. Now we're going to make sure one more time that we still have the halfway point. Okay, let's get these out of the way. Okay, see? It has... Oh. Okay, it has shifted. Right? You see? So we're going to line them back up, and we're going to make sure the halfway point one more time. We're going to line this up, the two ends. Okay, now we have our halfway point. Now the end that we're not using, just kind of move it out of the way. Now we're going to come back. Okay, now this, I'm going to have to do this so I can see, and then I'll show you what I'm doing here. Okay. What we're going to do is where the bottom of this blue piece, this running up and down, we're going to go through right here on this side, right here in this area. And we're going to come out right here where this green creates the V and this blue wraps around. We're going to come out right here in this area. Okay? Now, considering this is the first time, the first leg of this side, it's going to let me get it through there, make sure I don't poke anything. And I can't quite see, so just give me just a second. Okay. You see where I'm going through at? And you'll see where I'm coming out at. Right there. Right? Now that's all there is to it. And I'll say this too. Here's your tip, here's your trick, here's your insight. When you make one of these bracelets, if you know you're going to do stitching on it, don't pull it so tight as to make these gaps that you're trying to get your stitching needle through so tight that it's almost impossible to get it through. Don't pull it as tight. I know we say neat, clean, and tight, but don't pull it so tight that it's almost impossible to get that needle to go through there, right? Because once you run all this micro cord through there, it's gonna any looseness it's gonna fill in that looseness and it's gonna cinch it up. Does that make sense? So the final product will still be tight. Right? But we're gonna pull it through, and that cord is going to bury itself, but it's not going to come through because we've anchored it. We've looped it around the backside, that secondary cord of that Solomon, and it's not going to go anywhere. So what we're going to do now is basically we're going to run it across the top side right here. We get this out of the way so you can see. All right, we're going to run it across the top side right here, and it's going to go through in between those two core strands that are running. You're going to go right through the middle of those core strands, exactly where this blue cord goes through. Right, so you're basically running right next to this blue cord, and you're going to go through right here. All right, now let me get it through there, and I'll show you. When you do this a little bit, you'll figure out exactly what angle you need to kind of get this at to get it to go through. Make sure, hang on, give me a second. Let me make sure I haven't poked anything. It's kind of hard to see. Excuse me, folks. I'm going to get my light in the way so I can see. That's the, okay. Okay. But you see where I went through at. Right here where this blue is going through. And it's coming out in the same spot where the other one come out. Right? Now when I pull this through, it's going to tighten up around here. We'll see. Okay, we're going to pull this. As I go to pull it, I'm kind of let it fall into place at the top, right up there. Once it's in place, running across the top of that, kind of take it and just kind of give it a little tug, and it'll tighten it up right across there. And that's all there is to it. I'll show you one more time. We're going to go through, we're going to follow it around. It's coming out right here. We're going to follow it around this on the top side, and we're going to go through right here with this, where this blue cord goes through. Right here. That's where we're going through. I can't see very well. There we go. We see where it's going through at. And again, we see where it's coming out at. I'm going to go ahead and run this through here. And I'll get all this straight here in a second. We're going to run this up. Like I said, we're getting this second leg, this dead leg, if you will. It gets in the way every time, so you have to kind of get it out of the way. Now, as we pull it through, we got a little twist in it right there. Just get the twist out. And again, as we go to tighten it up, we just want to make sure it falls into where we want it, right across the top of that side. Once we get it there, kind of snug it up and just give it a little bit of a pull. That'll seat it in place and it'll stay there. And that's all you do. Okay? Now, that's all there is to that. Right? And you just continue on all the way down. Now, when you get finished and you come back, you you take your needle and you transfer it over here to the dead leg, which becomes the working leg, the working end. Does that make sense? And you follow through in the same spot that you did this top part. You go through in the bracelet the same way, same place, and it comes out in the same place. But when you go to wrap it around and tighten it up, you just follow the bottom of that, the type 1 blue cord, right? And you just continue on all the way down, right? Now I'm going to finish all this, and I'll come back and I'll show you how to start the other side, which is basically the same thing. Like I said, it's the same principle, but instead of wrapping around this piece of secondary cord, looping around this, you're going to loop around this piece of secondary cord, and you're going to follow the blue cord going this direction and down through the bracelet right here, and you'll come out right here. We see the principle of that, but I'll come back just to show you. May do it. And again, I'll do the top side all the way down. Then I'll come back with that second leg, because remember, we put the halfway point of our micro cord right here. So you have two legs. One leg does the top side, and the other leg does the bottom side. That's all there is to this. And we just run it all the way down. And when we get down to the end, and we tuck everything in, that's when we do our cut and burn on both our 550 and our micro cord. Makes sense? But like I said, I'll finish this side and I'll show you what it looks like. I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll show you how to set up that back side for this second leg, if you will, the left side of the bracelet. All right, give me a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, folks, we're back, and I've got the left side of the bracelet done, both the top and the bottom of the blue side. And I'll see if I can get this. Like I say, these colors are not the best to try to get to show up on the camera. So let's see if we can get this up here so you can see. Here, let me zoom in just a bit. Now, if we get this to focus, there we go. But we see the top and at the bottom, they come out in the same spot. You just run one at the top and one at the bottom of the cord, and they go through in the same spot on the back. And you just run it all the way down. Following the blue cord is all you're doing. All the way down. Right? Now, okay. Now, to do the left side of the bracelet, it's the same principle. The only difference is where we anchor the cord on the back. Here, let's zoom in just a bit more. And hopefully we can get this so we can see it. Like I said, not wanting to focus very well. I apologize, folks. Like I said, I'm not a filmmaker, and I don't have the best equipment to do this. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm a paracordologist. I know how to make paracord bracelets, not make films. Yeah, it's just not going to focus. Here we go, right there. Okay. We see the first one we anchored around this secondary cord of the main body of the bracelet. And they both went in here and they went through, following this blue cord. Now, for this side of the bracelet, we're going to do the same thing. I've cut approximately 6 feet of micro cord, and we're going to anchor it around this part of the, and we lost focus. I'm going to anchor it around this part of the secondary cord on the main body of the bracelet. And we're going to go through, let's see, going to go through, I want to say, right here. Get it to stay in focus. Right here. With both the cords. And we'll come out right here. Just as we come out right here in this, inside this V, if you will, we'll come out on this one right here. I'm going to do the same thing. Right? Now give me a moment and I'll show you how I anchor it, and I'll show you a couple of the stitches, and we'll be done. Let me make sure that I'm going to go through the right spot. Because like I said, the first time you go through, it can be a little tricky. Now I'm going to try to make me a hole right in here. Yeah, there it is right there. See? Kind of loosen it up a little bit. Okay, now, let's see. How are we going to do this? This will work. What we'll do is we're going to go up under this part right here. Now let me get this and I'll show you. We see that. Now just like before, we're going to pull this in until we get the halfway point of the microcord right here. And then we're going to loop it back around to anchor it onto this. Right? Okay, now let me do that. We're going to take both our ends, the dead leg over here, and the working leg on this side. Okay. Let me back out. Okay. And we see we still have way up. So let's even up these two ends. Right? Now we have the two ends of our microcord. Now we're going to just right? Now that gives us the midpoint. Now we're going to take the end that we're working with, get the dead leg end out of the way, and we're going to take the end that we're working with, and we're going to come back. We went through this direction up under that cord. Now we're going to come back over it and go through again, and that creates the loop around there. We see that? Now, I'm going to pull this tight, making sure we don't have the dead leg crossed into that loop. Okay, now, we pull it on there, we just kind of snug it up, both sides, just kind of snug it up. Now, let's make sure, let's still verify that we are at the halfway point. We'll take our two ends, even them up, and then grab, and just pull very carefully. And just kind of hold the bracelet and tug, and that'll give us our halfway point. Now, once again, we take the one coming out the top side, which is the dead leg side. Oh. Wait a minute. Yeah, there it is. And just kind of get it out of the way. Now, we're going to take this working end. Let me zoom back in and I'll show you. just as before. Just like, stay in focus, please. How we looped around this piece and we followed the bottom, this side of this blue cord. We followed it through here with the other to do this side. And what we're going to do here, we've anchored it and looped it here. Now we're going to follow this side of the blue cord through in order to do the stitching for this side of the bracelet. Does that make sense? Now we're going to try to get it through there. There we go. We see that? Now, we'll pull the excess through, being mindful of the twists. We don't want twists. Okay. Now, like I said, since it's anchored around that cord, that secondary cord, since it's anchored there around that secondary cord, it's not going to have very much give. It'll have a little give. If you pull on it, it will slip, but we don't want it to do that. So, now, we're going to keep the dead leg out of the way, and now, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to follow it around, and we're going to run it through right there. And just as before, where this blue cord goes through and goes between the two core strands, that's the same thing we're going to do with a micro cord. And like I say, this first time, I always do the top first. I always do the top side first, and then with the dead leg, I'll come back and I'll do this side, right? Now, like I said before, this first time that you go through there, you're going to have to widen it up just a little bit to get the lacing needle through. You know, kind of work it and get it through there. But once you get it through, when you come back and you do this other leg to do the bottom side, the hole's already been widened up. The gap's already been widened up, so it'll go right through. Right? Just first go through. Kind of be careful to make sure we don't poke our cords. We don't want to snag anything. You know, the hole neat, clean, and tight. I think that was it right there. Yep. Let me make sure I haven't snagged anything. Let me pull the light. Just give me just a second. Make sure. Okay. Now see, if you look, you see right there where I've created that hole. You can see through it. That's where we're going through. And we're going to do that. Both the top leg and the bottom leg is going to go through in that same spot. Right through that little hole, we can see. Okay? I'll poke it through there. Take the excess out. And just as before, when we go to tighten it up, we're going to make sure that it seats right there at the top. Running across the top. When we get it in place, we just give it a little tug to snug it up. That way it'll seat it in place and it'll stay there. Right? Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow it around. And we're going to go through right here. See the tip of it coming through. I want to make sure I haven't snagged anything. Yep, that's it. Push it through. taking out the slack. Now this can be confusing because you're wrapping around every time. And you just be mindful of where you got it. When we get all the slack out, we just make sure it's in the right spot. And then we just give it a tug. Just to kind of cinch it up just a bit and have it seated in place where we want it. Right? And that's all there is to it. And you just continue down, following this cord on the top side. When you get done, you just come back with the dead leg, reattach your fit here, and do the same thing. You go through in the exact same spot. You just, when you go to snug it up, you make sure it's running across the bottom. All right? I'll show you one more time. Come out here in the V. We follow it around. And we go through right here. Now remember, you're trying to go through, just kind of picture in your head those two cord strands running through. You're going between those two cord strands, exactly where this blue cord went through. So if you do it just right, and you get that stitching needle right at the correct angle, it'll go through there. And you won't snag anything. And then you just pull the slack out. We'll turn it back over so we can see. Right? Make sure it's in the right spot. Follow it around. Once it's in the right spot, we just give it a tug. And it seats it in place. And that's all there is to that, folks. That's it. It's not that hard. You just anchor the halfway point below when you did the salmon and the caged part, the secondary accent color, and the halfway point is right here. You anchor your micro cord just below it and follow that side of the accent color through and wrap around with both legs, and then you come back and you do the same thing, but you anchor it the halfway point at just above the main accent color and follow it through and wrap it all the way around. And you follow them all the way to the end to where you've ended everything. Right? Now when I get done, I'll come back and I'll show you the cut and burns on all these, and I'll show you the finished product. How about that? But I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, folks, we got it finished. I figured I'd come back and let you see. Here, let's zoom in so you can get a better look at this. Hopefully we can get it to be in focus. All right, and down here at the end, this side right here on the end, this side right here on the end, this is the one it never wants to look right, but we're going to try our best to fix it. Okay, which we see we basically got the main blue cord, accent cord, and the two micros. And same with this, and they both wrap around, and they all come to this one point right here. We're going to end them. And then, as the two main bracelet cords come to an end right here. So we're going to cut and burn these together, and we're going to cut and burn all this together. But first, we're going to try to straighten this up. We're going to tighten it up. If you look and you see how this cord comes around here, it kind of sticks out a little much. We're going to tighten all this up before we do it, right? And make it look good. Then we'll cut and burn it, okay? So, I'm going to back out just a little bit. We're going to look at it. Okay, let's see. What we'll do is we're going to pull this one taut. I'll squeeze it in my fingers while pulling, and this will pull this tight on this side, and then this right here's already been tight. All this looks good. The only thing is this one section right there. It never wants, that last piece, it never wants to look right. So let's see if we can't get this to look right. We're going to reach in there, kind of get a hold of that piece, kind of pull it back out just a little bit, so it's not so buried down in there. I can get a hold of it good. Give me a second. There we go. And what I've done is I've reached in here and grabbed the main accent color, and I've pulled it out. Now we're going to come back and pull these micro cords just a little bit. That way it looks a little bit better. It's not really much you can do. We're trying to make it as neat and clean, as tight as we can. But it doesn't always, just because this is the very end of the bracelet, it doesn't always want to do right. We know this. The top of the weave often doesn't look good. And then the bottom doesn't always look good. It's just because the beginning and the end. Okay, see, now that looks just a little bit better. We're going to go with that. Yeah, we're going to go with that. Now, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to snip and singe these two right here. I'll say this. I made another video on how to end a Solomon bracelet and having, instead of having one cord on the top burn, cut and burn, and one on the back side, I do it in a way that they both come out and they're on the back side, right? So when I do this, I'm gonna cut them and I'm gonna burn them. But when I go to smooth them out, I'll smooth from the front of the bracelet and I'll roll it around this way. That way it'll push that plastic toward the back of the bracelet. It won't be seen, right? It'll make it less noticeable. And that makes for a cleaner bracelet. Okay, so we're going to do this first. If you don't have a set of good shears, I highly recommend investing in a set. Okay, now. Get everything out of the way. Get my smoothing tool. Whatever you use, have it ready. And then start. Remember, we're trying to burn only the cords that we just cut. Nothing else. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's the goal. We'll get them good and melty, and then we come back and we roll from the outside edge toward the back and push everything toward the front of the bracelet. We're pushing everything around to the back. That way, from the front side, it's not noticeable. Right? Okay, now this one is going to be tricky because we have 2 thick cords and these 4 thin cords. And the goal here, this is what we're doing. The goal here is that when we cut and burn all of these, we end up with one solid mass of plastic where all these cords are melded together. When you burn them, they all meld together as one big chunk. That way, there's no way that any of them will work themselves back out, right? That's the goal. So we're going to look at it and get everything kind of where we want it. And I always recommend when you're doing this with the micro cord, try to get the micro cord kind of in the middle of all these cords. If that makes any sense. Okay, now let's try this one. We're going to do it the same way. When I go and to cut, and when I go to burn it and then smooth it out, I'm going to start from the front of the bracelet and push everything that way. That way it'll push all that, and it won't be as noticeable, hopefully not noticeable at all, from the display side. We want the display side to be neat and clean. Okay, so let's cut all these. Bam. Okay, now we're going to look at it. Get your smoothing tool ready. Now, let it cool off for a second. What I usually do is I run my thumb over it to make sure there's no hard, sharp edges, no burrs. And you can take it, let it cool off a lot, make sure it's very cool before you do this. And you can take it on the back side of your wrist. And see, because the back side of your wrist is very sensitive. So you don't want to put, a hot cord on there because then you can burn yourself. But you'll feel any of them burrs that might be there. And plus, that's where the buckle and everything's going to be. So you want to make sure that it's not going to be scratchy. I think I may try to hit this in just one more time. Yeah, that did it right there. Smoothed it out just a little bit. Okay, we got a little bit of a bump right there. Yeah, that did it. That did it, folks. Now we have a cut and burn. We can see that. Like I said, some people go, well, it doesn't look all that great. Well, maybe not, but it's on the back side. This is the display side. This is what's going to be seen when wearing the bracelet. You're not going to see that. Right, but there we go. There's a finished product. We have a cage Solomon with stitching and a tactical buckle. Turned out quite nicely. But with that, I'll say like I always say. Keep it clean, keep it neat, and keep it tight. Happy weaving, folks.